All right. Well, hello, everybody. This is Dave Dominguez with Cross Country Mortgage. And today I have Brian Wick from Realty Executives Arizona Territory joining me. Hello, Brian.
Hey, Dave. Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
You too, man. I've known Brian for a very long time. He was lucky enough to be my best man at my wedding. And we've worked together in various capacities, but he's been a realtor for, how long have you been a realtor now?
So thanks for having me on. Been licensed since 2005. So if I do math correctly, that would be about a long time.
Right.
Very long time.
I can't even begin to think of the number. It's just huge. Now, when you first started, you were hunting down land deals.
Started out in vacant land. That's right. We were working on a team, brokering subdivisions, just bird dogging subdivisions, land, ranch, individual lots, you name it. And it was an interesting time because towards the end of 2005, everybody got their fill. And you could kind of hear from the builders and developers, maybe they had taken on enough, and things are starting to shift a little bit. But yeah, started off in land and saw that side of things, and then made the transition into homes sometime in the fall of 2008.
Right on. Cool. Now, you primarily work with sellers of homes. So you are what they would call a listing agent.
So I do both. It's about 60-40 listings to buy. So 60% of the business comes from listings, helping anybody look at the market, see the best time to sell, how to strategize, how to price properly, and maximize their exposure. And then obviously the other 40% is working with buyers, whether it's a first-time home buyers or experienced buyer or an investor looking at multi-unit, vacant land, you name it.
Right on. And you do primarily the Tucson area, let's say Southern Arizona.
Yeah, Green Valley up to Red Rock, and then over to Vail. So it's a big area, Pima County, but every once in a while we'll go north or over to Benson, but primarily the greater Tucson area.
Right on. Cool, man. Cool. Now, you've done some projects and stuff on your own. One of the other persons that I've interviewed on here was a gal named Nancy who was building a house. But you had sort of a land project going on your own. Talk a little bit about that, about splitting a lot and just the rigmarole you went through.
Yeah, it's definitely, I didn't get to split it. I had to rezone it first. So basically, long short, your property has a zoning which comes from the city or the county. It says you've got this space of land that you can use, and you have to have a minimum of, say, 10,000 square feet, for example. Sure. Well, I had a property that exceeded the size, but I was surrounded by a zoning that would allow me to essentially split the lot if I got the same zoning as my neighbors. So in order to split it one time, we had to go to the county and say, hey, look, we think this is a viable split. We've got a residence on one half of the lot that you can rezone it and then split it once to get another vacant lot. And that process is fairly straightforward on paper, but it does involve discussing and talking and presenting with your neighbors, along with Planning and Zoning Commission and the Board of Supervisors and things like that.
Wow.
So it took a while. We presented our case to the neighbors. Some were neutral, some agreed, some disagreed, and you do what you can to meet in the middle and work with your neighbors. And then make your case to Planning and Zoning Commission, and then they'll make a recommendation, and they'll say, look, we agree with this, or we don't. If they agree with it, then you go to the Board of Supervisors, and there you make your case again, and they will vote yay or nay. And once you get that final vote, if it's a yay, you can enjoy your new zoning. And in my case, we were able to get that, and we will record this split one time. And so we essentially created two parcels out of one.
Sweet. Right on. Now, but it took a while. How long? Not the first go around. You went on this like twice, but the second time, how long did it take from beginning to end, roughly?
8 months.
Wow.
8 months.
Okay.
9 months, 8 or 9 months. Yeah. So I mean, it is a process. The county wants to basically see what you're doing, and you've got to justify to them why their current zoning is wrong. And so there's an application process. You got to pay for that, and you've got to get your application reviewed. And then once you get it reviewed, you turn in your submittal along with your review. And a lot of the time that it takes involves the county notifying the neighbors. And then once the neighbors are notified, they have a time window that they can say their piece and say, look, I support it, I don't support it. And that back and forth can take a good amount of time. And that's fine. That's just part of the process.
Yeah. Right on. One of the other cool things that Brian does, he sends out these newsletters that I read every time they come out diligently. When I try. But the statistics that Brian shares is fascinating, and that's I guess the meat and potatoes of what Brian can provide is just this knowledge of the Tucson area. So are you able to share this stuff, Brian, like what's going on in the world right now?
Sure. I like to keep an eye on the MLS, and MLS will put out every month what happens in the previous month. So we'll get the stats for October and November, and we just got September stats. But I like to layer that info so I can see year over year, how are we looking? And I think using a visual can help. It certainly helps me. So let me share my screen with you, Dave, here. And all right, am I up and running?
You're running. Cool.
Okay, so just bear with me here. So this top chart that we're looking at, you have July, August, and September. So that's Q3 of 2023. The red is last year. And so when we look at single family homes in July, there was 1,550 listed. This year, we're looking at 1,150. So that's a delta of 400 homes, something to the tune of 25%. And that has followed through most of the year. That disparity is coming down a little bit, but the trend for homeowners like you and I and anybody else thinking about it is, there's less competition. There's less people putting their homes on the market. And, we can all talk about what is making that happen. You got interest rates, you've got pricing, where are people going to go once they sell? There's lots of questions sellers have when they are eyeballing the market. But you look at year over year, that's quite a bit of difference on Q3. We can look at the whole year if we'd like, just over here.
Right.
Year-to-date listing activity. Okay, what this chart is telling us year over year, each month, how many homes were listed. Now, the blue line here is this year. What's interesting about this year, you look with me, it's pretty steady. It goes up and down, obviously, but you don't see any big, huge jumps.
Right.
Now, last year, the red line here is 2022. Now, Dave, when would you peg the start date of interest rates really having an impact on activity?
Right about then. If we go back to last year and we look at interest rates, they started to rise right around the summer of last year. So June, July-ish. Yeah. And then you can see,
so,
right there.
Exactly. So every seller is a buyer, just about. I mean, there's some that go into retirement homes or some that go into rentals, whatever. But if we think that every seller is actually a buyer, what we see here is that our sellers are thinking, if I sell my house, where am I going to go next? Or more importantly, if I sell my house, what kind of interest rate am I going to get to buy? So you can kind of see people really dropping off. Where we finished last December with 742 new listings on the market. Okay. Now let's give ourselves some context if we can. Let's look at pre-pandemic, for example. 2019 is also the thin blue line here. You don't see a huge difference in listing activity between 2022 and then pre-pandemic. The seasons kick in here. The seasonality will kick in and things drop off. So we'll see what happens here as interest rates continue their climb upward.
Right.
And we could very well see more people start to trail off, or do we see some of the people that were waiting just give up waiting and say, well, we got to do this? So it's an interesting time here. 2022 is an outlier, but we're kind of bucking the trend.
Well, historically speaking,
bear with me
real quick. Historically speaking, Tucson and Southern Arizona slows down in the wintertime as far as real estate goes. Our season uh, slows down big time around November and then kind of picks up again in February, right? Like as far as number of homes for sale and number of homes being sold, we kind of
Sure.
sleep.
Some of this is seasonality. So
Right.
let's not try and make everybody go crazy here, but let's get rid of this year. And you can see in a normal year, the orange is COVID, new listings drop off.
Right.
But every year is pretty much in that 1,200 to 1,700 listings, and then they all drop off. Even if we get rid of our red year last year with interest rates picking up, you can see this trend from October to December.
Fascinating.
And remember, this isn't closings. This is people deciding to put their home on the market this month.
Right.
So it drops off October, November, December.
Now, it could be said that, I mean, the people that have their homes listed for sale in November, December, January, where this is real low, they got to sell their house. There's some other outside force, perhaps, So do you think someone would get a better deal during that time if they were a buyer, perhaps? What do you think?
So every transaction is different.
Right.
And that's where an agent's going to come in to ask the right questions, get the right context with the house you're interested in. There's things you can look for, like listing history. If it's been on the market for a long time, has it been on the market multiple times? What kind of neighborhood are we in? Are we in an active adult community? Are we in an area that might be more dominated with families than single people? You've got some various factors to look at, and you got to ask the listing agent, and see what they might share with you. And of course, on the buyer side, what's the deal? On average, sellers this year are still getting anywhere from 97 to 98% of their asking price.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so if you expect to get a seller to drop their price for you 10%, that might be a little ambitious. Now, that doesn't mean we don't try and take a look at our options, but you may get a little more wiggle room through the holidays here. You're certainly going to get more wiggle room here than here.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Right on.
I can show you a couple
this one.
more.
Yeah.
So this one right here, Dave, is homes sold this year to date. And we'll just start off simple. Year over year, we started quite a bit less. If you remember this chart here, this will pick up off of, so we started new listings here, way down at 742. Homes sold at the beginning of this year in January were 635, which makes sense. You would think that a little bit less homes sold than were listed. So we started off pretty low. The red line is 2022, last year, homes sold per month. So we saw a similar trend going up into the spring. That trend take a little dip in April, beginning of summer, and then we see a continuous trend. So the trends you can see, Dave, line up pretty well. Just the overall volume is quite a bit less. I mean, that's 1,380 homes sold in March of last year. We barely broke 1,000 this year. So that's 300 some odd sellers that didn't sell. Right. And more importantly, it's 300 some odd buyers that weren't able to get a house.
Right. There's some sort of combination of both, right? Was it the high interest rate that kept the buyer from buying, or was it the low interest rate that kept the seller from listing their home for sale? The golden
well, I think it's the
handcuffs,
Well, it's the former, because remember, your seller is in fact a buyer more often than so. The handcuffs that are arresting the buyer for the homes that people are trying to sell are the same handcuffs that are keeping the seller from buying. This gap narrowed a little bit this summer. I think you could probably talk to it. You see a little bit of fatigue with buyers tired of waiting, and so they just bite the bullet. Things moved here, but now our season is going to kick in, and of course on top of interest rates. So we see a fairly drop, not a steep drop, but if we want to compare this to other years, we don't want to go death by charts here. But look, I mean, 2019, 2020, and 2021 held that pattern pretty steadily.
Right.
And
Right.
even, last year, prices were up, but those interest rates kicking in, fewer sellers and buyers making deals, that number of homes falls off. So,
Exactly.
we really, we're at 700 homes in December of last year. We're at 757 now. So
Right.
if we continue to remain at levels lower than 2022, I mean, that's pretty low.
Yeah, we're talking like 400, 450 maybe.
Yeah,
Somewhere.
I mean, that would be Twilight Zone, in my opinion, Dave. I mean,
Right.
just you think about it, from Red Rock to Green Valley to Vail. And you think of price points of a $30,000 trailer to a $3 million home in the foothills. That's a huge amount. And then only 400 or 500 homes sell.
Right.
That's not a lot. That's not a lot. Okay.
Wow.
So it's interesting to look at year over year.
Yeah.
Right? Kind of, I get kind of nerdy. Homes sold. This is Q3. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So
It's so steady. Yeah.
very, very consistent, just
Yeah.
less than last year. So
Right.
we're not seeing a lot of volatility. We're seeing consistency, but the total volume, numbers of sales, and the amount of real estate sold is less. And again, I think we're agreeing that the culprit is interest rate. We look at inventory. So inventory is the amount of homes available for sale at the end of a given month. So at the end of July of this year, there were 1,773 available homes. Okay. So it's kind of went down in August and it perked up a little bit. And that would be similar to last year, August to September of last year. We perked up a little bit. People anticipating changes for school, jobs, snowbirds are coming. So this is our Q3 activity. Again, a good disparity between the two. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
See what else I got for everybody.
Yeah.
Inventory year over year. We just looked at that. And then here's our monthly average sale price. Right.
So our average sales price is up year over year.
Year over year. Correct.
Right.
By a good amount, almost 10%. Almost 10%. Now, again, this is single family homes. I don't have townhomes in here, no particular reason other than when people generally think about real estate, it's a house. And we could obviously revisit this later for everything included. But looking at houses, we started off pretty strong. Of course, the beginning of 2022, we were still seeing low interest rates. And what I think is contributing to this, people trying to rush in before interest rates continue to rise.
Yep.
And also that limited inventory we've talked about. There's less people listing, so that inventory is staying low. But average closing price for single family homes every month, we're still up over here. I would anticipate that we would maintain levels equal to or greater than last year for the rest of this year.
Yeah, I would say
part
so.
of that, we have new construction homes that can afford to do buy downs for their buyers for interest rates, so they can try and keep those prices strong. But year to date, you can see, just for the heck of it, our peak was for single family homes, 495,000 average closing price, which is substantial. And May of last year was 475. I think that was our peak. So we're just under the peak of 2022 for September. So
that's fascinating.
Lots to think about. I mean, if you're a seller and if you're a buyer. I mean, the elephant in the room that everybody knows about is interest rates, and nobody can do anything about it but talk to our buddy Dave here and see what the best strategy is. But also, I mean, you really want to take a look at the market around you as a seller. You want to see, okay, what can I do within my four walls to make this appealing? Who and what do I need to be aware of around me when I'm thinking about selling? And what I mean by that, do you have competition? Do you have listings that are less than your price? Do you have listings that are greater than your price? Do you have listings that are changing their price What's the feedback from showings, things like that. So, yeah, we live in interesting times, Dave. I think you well know.
Yeah, it's fascinating. What it shows though is that real estate is still a safe bet as far as investments go, despite interest rates rising to levels that that I've never seen before in 20 years. We're still seeing values go up. Probably mainly because of supply and demand. There's still a demand, but the supply has gone down. You know, but
yeah, I think big picture to your point there, that demand for the last 24, 36 months, demand has exceeded supply, and supply just has not caught up. And so we're still seeing the remnants of that. It's anybody's guess if demand starts to drop off more than their supply. I mean, we are going to see days on market increase.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty clear. And when that happens, the inventory will slowly but surely increase. So
you think with longer days on market, will that lead to price reductions, or what are your thoughts on that?
It generally does. It generally does. If you're on the market for 2, 3, 4 months, here's what I tell sellers. If we're on the market for 1 month and no showings, no interest, it's of course overpriced.
Right.
If we're on the market and we're getting 1 to 4 showings per week, but still no offer, we might be off the market a little bit, not so much as if we were getting no showings, but we're getting people interested. We're getting activity. We're getting showings. People want to look at your house. They don't want to make you an offer. So that we could be conditioned. We could be priced. It could be just a lull in the market. That can happen, especially in certain areas.
Sure.
But ideally, if we're running inventories at lower levels, that should tell us that we shouldn't be on the market for that long. I think the average days on market, generally speaking, is still around 30 to 40 days.
Wow.
So that's still pretty good. No, it's not. That's only 4 weekends of people coming in and viewing your home. And if you go beyond that and there's other homes selling, we got to ask ourselves, what is keeping this property from selling?
Right.
And ultimately, it's up to the seller if they want to adjust their price.
Well, exactly. Your job is to give the information that you've gathered from history, from keeping track of stuff, your wisdom, but ultimately the seller's the one that's going to decide what the price is going to be, or what their listing is going to be. The buyer will determine the price, really. Yep. Yeah. Well, this is fascinating, man. Thanks for sharing this stuff with us. I had one other question for you, and now it escapes me. So let's do shameless plug. Brian, what is your cell phone number?
It is 520-275-520-275-0509.
Right on. And you've been a real estate agent forever, and you're with Realty Executives Arizona. Guys, if you're thinking about selling a home now or in the future, hit up Brian. He'll discuss over your options and plan out a strategy to determine when to list the home to maximize your profit. So thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, thanks again for thinking I'm going to have me. It's a pleasure.
Anytime.